Start recording. Well, welcome back, everyone. Great to see you after a long summer. I'm very excited about today's session because I'm going to cover a lot of stuff that we haven't been able to cover for a while since we've been on vacation. Um, One of the things that I want to briefly talk about is the purpose of these Zooms. Usually I do like a 20-minute or something presentation on something, and then we do Q&A, we sometimes role play, answer all your questions. Um, but I want to go a little bit deeper and say that uh, for me, this is kind of a mission, and I want to tell you what that mission is based on. One of the times I was on the Oprah show back in the 90s was with a panel who had near-death experiences and that they had been dead for at least 10 minutes. One person was dead for 37 minutes, apparently, and they all had near-death experiences. And I got to be friendly with these people. Some of them became best-selling authors, Daniel Brinkley, what was the other person's name? There were a few people who wrote best-selling books. But one of the things that they all agreed upon was upon being clinically dead, many of them were in a hospital with no heartbeat, no brain waves, anything, for up to 30 minutes. They all said that they reviewed their life and that the review was based pretty much on the question or on the lens of how loving they were. And a lot of them mentioned that it was little acts of love and kindness or little acts of selfishness that they were reviewing. It wasn't, them winning the big trophy. It was, did they open the door for the person who was in a wheelchair? And I found that really interesting. It mimicked what I experienced during my 2-minute near-death experience. And I found it also interesting that when you go into that literature, almost everybody agrees that that is their experience, that there seems to be a light or a power that is interested in our evolution towards love. And I don't think it's any coincidence that pretty much every religion is based on either awareness or love, and even the ones that are based on awareness that's a vehicle to get to be more loving, compassionate, and such. And it really doesn't matter what culture the person has this near-death experience in or what religion. It's very much always the same, a very similar pattern. If you want to learn the latest about near-death experiences and the science behind it, there's a great book called After by Bruce Grayson. He's probably the best known researcher, has researched it more scientifically than anyone else, and has done that for about 50 years. And he presents stories that really don't, that some people's stories don't fit into our materialistic view of the world in any way. So it really is very powerful. But I mention that because we're obviously living in a time where love is and kindness and understanding is in very short supply. So I think of it as a grace that we're in a time like this, that we're giving a technology to experience love, at least temporarily, to have a sense of what it's like. A lot of the couples I work with, they don't really even know what love is anymore. We have so many images of it on TV and movies. It's often combined with sex and lust and all that stuff. But at its basis is really compassion and kindness. And there's not a lot of media showing that. And so we get lost. And it's really a gift that we can guide people into knowing their true nature, which I believe is love, and to, just take it for a test drive and get inspired to perhaps move more in that direction, which there's a lot of evidence showing that that's why we're here. But in a crazy world like we have now, we can easily forget that that's why we're here. And it's very important to have these helpers, whether it be a song that helps you feel love, or a nature environment, or in this case, a chemical that gives us that experience and helps us to view our life from that bigger perspective. So for me, this is really a mission. I think it's my way of trying to help a hurting world. And of course, you have your way, but hopefully that when it comes to promoting anything, whether it be love or your business or anything you're trying to do, it helps to have an understanding of what your mission and purpose is. And as you try to become an MDMA facilitator, there are going to be obstacles on your path. Marketing, all the little things you have to do, going through my program, etc. And if you have a strong enough purpose, that's easy to get through. If you're wondering like, I'd rather do this or some other thing, it's harder. I've been able to reach about, from what I hear, about 200 million people, and some of that involved really, promoting stuff that was challenging at times, learning about marketing. But because I had a clear purpose of what I was trying to do, it made it enjoyable and easy. So I hope that gets through to you. We're going to talk about some interesting marketing strategies today that I haven't talked about before and give you some powerful updates. One update in having uh, communicated with Rick Doblin recently was that there's a possibility in the new administration in America that MDMA will be reconsidered for FDA approval. They're looking into that. Ends up Robert Kennedy Jr. Is a big psychedelic fan, and he is trying to perhaps, in the last administration, the FDA didn't approve it for really bogus reasons, in my opinion. But so they're looking at it again, and they might schedule it in the next 6 months as a Schedule 4 drug. So I want to tell you what that is and what that might mean for us. I'll read a description of it. Schedule 4 drugs under the Controlled Substances Act has a low potential for abuse. Those drugs have a low potential for abuse and a currently accepted medical use in the United States, and a limited potential for causing dependence, either psychological or physical, compared to Schedule 3 drugs. This classification applies to substances like benzodiazepines like Valium and Xanax, some sedatives, anti-anxiety medications. Schedule 4 drugs can be prescribed by a healthcare professional, but they must be written, called in, or electronically transmitted by a licensed prescriber. So if this happened, it would be kind of like a workaround on the FDA approval thing, and would probably get a lot of news. He said that this might happen in the next 6 months, and then if that doesn't happen, they have to basically redo all the studies that they've already done, which is basically, a way to delay the acceptance of MDMA. It's hard for them to not accept it because it is about 34 times more effective than 34 times more effective than the next best treatment, which is antidepressants. But it does create problems because there is a therapeutic aspect to MDMA therapy, and the FDA has never approved a drug along with a therapeutic application, which made their approval much more complicated. Anyways, that's a mouthful, but so possibly good news ahead that way. Um, so today I want to talk first about, before I talk about marketing, a psychological obstacle, and that is in life and in business, there's always a weakest link. Um, and the saying, you're only as strong as the weakest link in a chain. So let's say you're trying to be rich, just as an example. Well, if you're not rich now, why aren't you? Well, you'd have to look at what is the weakest link. There might be a lot of reasons why you're not rich. It might be that you have negative associations to being rich. It might be that you don't have any skills. It might be that you're not friendly with people. It might be that you don't know how to do a resume. There could be a lot of reasons. But what's the weakest link? And it's hard for people to know what their weakest link is in achieving a goal because you're not achieving the goal, so you don't really know. But it is good to ask friends or family who know you well what might be your weakest link in life, in happiness and getting rich, or specifically in being an MDMA facilitator. So in my case, I don't really have that much of a weak link in that area. Of course, I do have it in other areas, but I'm booked months ahead, and I have periodically looked at what is the weakest link and attacked it, meaning let me get rid of that one, then the next one until obviously I have a lot of uh, clients in this field. So one way to know your weakest link is to ask your friends, why aren't I making more money as an MDMA facilitator? Well, they might say, well, I didn't know you were an MDMA facilitator. That's one reason. Or they might say, well, you're too shy about what you're doing, or you're too paranoid you're going to get in legal trouble, or you don't have a brochure, or uh, are not willing to put the time, energy, and money every week into moving that forward, or whatever. So you can look at the results in your life and see what's kind of weak. It might be your relationships, it might be money, it might be your body, it might be, trying to become more successful in this field. Your life will give you clues as to what you're weak in. Currently I have a torn meniscus in my knee. Well, I could now say that my right knee is the weak link in my body. And so I spend time every day exercising that. Um, and you have three things at your disposal: time, energy, and money. So putting time into marketing yourself, putting your energy, your focus, and then maybe even money, where you hire a coach or you hire a firm or you learn a certain way of getting Instagram reels or whatever it is. Those are your three resources. And I'll talk about some ways that you might do that that I've learned about recently. And the way this came about is I was at a party and I asked somebody, what do you do for a living? And he said, I have a few million followers on Instagram and I teach people how to make Instagram videos. A few million followers, I didn't even know what Instagram was, to tell you the truth. I know it has something, short videos or something like TikTok. And so I have a sheet where I said, hey, why don't we exchange an hour of information? He was interested in MDMA, so I told him, a lot I knew about MDMA, and I found out all about Instagram and marketing and things like that. And normally he charges, I think, $800 an hour, so it was a good deal for me. And he showed me some things on Instagram. If I wanted to market on Instagram, that would be useful. Now, I'm not a big social media person. In fact, I didn't even know if I was on social media at all. Ends up I am, according to someone who told me I was. But the key is to always be investing in the latest marketing information, because wherever there's money involved, there's always movement. It's always changing. It's always improving, or it's always moving forward. And you want to know, if you have a mission to help people with this magical substance, you want to know how to do that. Now, in the course, we spent 3, 4, 5 hours talking about that. And in some of these supervisions, we also talked about that. There's a lot of ways of doing that, podcasts, reaching out to friends, emails, writing a brochure, uh, many other methods. But I do want to talk a little bit about TikTok and Instagram today, since I haven't talked about that before. But before I do that, I have a question for you. And that is, uh, what's your excuse for not being more successful as an MDMA facilitator? I realize this is a confronting question, but we always have excuses in our head that we tend to believe. And I'd like to know what your excuse is. And you don't have to tell me and the whole audience here, but I want you to be able to uh, say to yourself what it is so that you can perhaps attack that excuse or perhaps overcome it somehow. So, if you can write it down, what's your reason for not being more successful? And as you overcome that excuse, you'll likely be more successful. For some people, it's that they just don't have marketing experience, or they don't spend time on it, or they don't know how to do hard things over a period of time. Um, but everybody has their reason. So what I see as key traits to be successful as an MDMA facilitator is, first of all, having a good heart. And I assume if you took the training, you're sincere, you have a good heart, so that's not a problem. But something that can be a problem is your degree of persistence, meaning that at first, when you're trying to do something, you get almost no results and have to give maximum effort. Over time, as you keep on making the same amount of effort, you get much more results for the same amount of effort. And then eventually you get a lot of results for almost no effort, which is kind of where I personally am now in relationship to this stuff. I get a lot of results and I don't have to spend time marketing myself. But that's not how it starts. It's hard to get over that first thing of making, 5 hours a week doing marketing or whatever, and then getting nothing for 6 months until then you get a lot. Um, so that's something to think of. You need persistence. You also want to learn from experts. I learned more from this guy in 1 hour about Instagram and TikTok than I could have learned in months of just, going around there. Uh, and he charges $800 an hour, so he probably knows his stuff. He has a couple million followers, and it was very interesting too. I kind of like it in that way. So learning from experts, and last but not least, experimentation, because this guy said, this is what seems to work, but everything's different, so you have to experiment a little bit and find out what works for you. So those are all things to consider. Um, I'm going to put in the chat, if I can find it, uh, a a I guess a website. No, well, yeah, I guess it's a website. Um, and he recommended this, and I thought it was actually quite good. This is a 19-year-old girl who has apparently millions of followers on Instagram. Um, and she explains what her company does now in terms of, let's see if I can put it in the chat. There we go. I think this will work. Hold on a second. Hopefully you see that in the chat now. Um, and in like I don't know, 3-minute video, she shows every step that she takes to reach millions of people on Instagram. And you can hire her firm to do all that for you, or she kind of explains in about 3 minutes what she's doing. I may have to mute somebody. Hold on a second. Okay. Um, so that can be very helpful just to give you an overview. Uh, but one of the things this guy said is he does like people's attention span is so short that you make on TikTok or in Instagram 1 minute or less videos that you always want to have kind of a headline that's intriguing. Like he came up with ideas or something that would be kind of surprising. For example, can you heal your relationship in 1 day with MDMA? Or uh, uh, can you do MDMA on your own without a therapist? Or uh, can MDMA heal your trauma in 5 hours? You know, things like that, provocative statements. And then you have, you know, 55 seconds of content. You put it on there. And he said that the key is really consistency, that you put something out frequently and you get followers who know that you're an MDMA expert and have an easy way to reach you, things like that. Um, so those are some ideas. Can you do MDMA with no legal risk? You know, that would be another provocative headline, for example. Uh, and for better or worse, Instagram and TikTok, and maybe I don't even know what Snapchat does, but these are where people are showing up a lot now, as well as podcasts. So, you know, a lot of people might put a blurb out to a podcast, but having being that I have a podcast called Awareness Explorers, it's the people who are persistent that we tend to interview. So we get, I don't know, like one or two pitches per day for my podcast. 90% of them are totally off base as to what the podcast is about. So those we can eliminate. But you know, like you, I have too many emails and such, so I often put them in a bin. But if somebody is annoying and they keep sending me once a week their pitch and it's in the ballpark of what we're looking for, those are the people we tend to interview. And it's the same with you trying to get on a podcast or get an article in a local newspaper or whatever it is. This is a somewhat hot topic, so people are looking for that. And if you have a particular angle, I just got a pitch for somebody who said MDMA can be useful for helping dogs overcome their trauma. Ends up it is. There's been studies about that. So, you know, whatever your particular slant on it, that can be very useful as well. In a little bit, we'll transition to questions and talk about whatever you want to talk about. But I do want to mention one other thing, and that is I still am putting out the training. It's still available at mdmatraining.net. And there's still a discount code of if people put off 200, they get $200 off the normal price. And if you referred them, you can let me know, and I will send you $200 for each referral that actually signs up for the course. So that's another example of marketing. Unfortunately, a lot of success in business, anyways, comes down to how well you market yourself. And, you know, there's people doing this type of stuff without training and doing it, you know, not with the best integrity. And that always motivated me to like put myself out there more because I thought I was doing it really well with integrity. And so you're competing with those people. So to keep your clients from going with a therapist or a healer that's of less integrity or less skill than you, put yourself out there as someone who really is good at this, has good heart, and can really help people. And by doing that, the whole protocol of doing this over Zoom, which is, I won't call it my invention, I didn't invent Zoom, but it's my, say, unique approach. It gets it out there more. And I think that rather than doing the approach, the MAPS approach, which is going to cost about $15,000 per person, and not get that greater results because there's no therapy involved, really, or very, very little. Um, that approach really is a dead end in the long term. But this approach of doing it over Zoom in a way that doesn't put you at legal risk uh, is really a much better approach, and in my opinion, gets much better results. Although I don't have the $10 million to do a 5-year study on that. So that's how I look at it. So hopefully you have a sense of mission around this, and you can go out and help people and work on your weak link as a way of making sure that you benefit and your clients benefit, and that this protocol gets out to more people. I hope that's helpful. In future Zooms, we will cover different topics each time. And now we'll end the recording and we'll do a Q&A.